Hello everyone, this is Fan01 here, and welcome back to another Storytime video. We are going to be carrying on reading another 3 chapters of Farmageddon, a Shaun the Sheep movie, the official book of the film. So we are going to start off from chapter 3, reading to chapter 6. So I hope you enjoy this next 3 chapters I'll be reading for you today. And I'll just first put the camera down. So let's start from chapter 3. Dexter, the forest takeaway delivery boy, thought he had met just about everyone in Mossington. There was Mr. and Mrs. Pocket, who ordered one sausage supper on a Tuesday night to share in front of their favourite TV show, Horace Chomp, the school's headmaster, who asked for his pizzas to come with extra garlic and anchovies, which made his breath extra smelly for all the children he taught the next day. Then there was the Loafer family, who liked their fish and chips on top of a cheese and tomato pizza. So it came as quite a surprise when Dexter was asked to deliver a stack of pizzas to an odd-looking and rather wobbly gentleman who seemed to have moved into Mossy Bottom Farm. The man seemed to have 3 wooden legs and was wearing a coat and gloves, despite being inside the cosy farmhouse. He said nothing as he took the pizzas and quickly shut the door. Dexter looked at his hand to examine his tip of old football coins and buttons. He sighed and hoped that the customer wouldn't become a regular. Inside the farmhouse, Shaun shrugged off the farmer's coat, jumped down off the 3-legged stool, and popped the gloves back in the basket by the front door. His mouth watered as he grabbed the pizza boxes and headed back to the barn. He arrived to a chorus of cheers from the rest of the flock, but their joy wouldn't last for long. You see, one of the things about sheepdogs is that they have an excellent sense of smell, and as well as being able to sniff out trouble, Bitzer was excellent at sniffing out a pizza, especially when the pizza was somewhere it shouldn't be. Bitzer marched in behind Shaun, took the pizza boxes off the distraught sheep, and headed back to the farmhouse. He knew the farmer loved pizza. For once, the flock's mischief would make Bitzer look good. Sure enough, at the sight of the pizza boxes, the farmer jumped up from his chair. What a good idea. They grabbed a box each and lifted the lids, only to find that the pizza boxes were empty. Back in the barn, Shaun opened the pizza box he managed to hide from Bitzer. The flock crowded around expectantly. It too was empty. This left 2 options. Either Dexter had become peckish on his way to Mossy Bottom Farm and decided to eat all of the pizzas in one go, or someone else had stolen the pizzas when no one was looking. Shaun and the flock headed to bed with grumbling tummies. Shaun wasn't sure if it was his stomach or something else that was keeping him awake that night. He tossed and turned and couldn't fall asleep. Eventually Shaun got up and stared out of the barn window from his spot high up in the barn. He watched as a line of strange vehicles rumbled along the road into Mossington. Big black vans and cars with shining headlamps out of the corner of his eye. Shaun thought he saw something move among the crops. A closer look revealed nothing. It must have been a rabbit or the wind. With a yawn, Shaun slowly made his way back to bed. Somehow he couldn't shift the feeling that someone or something was watching him. Early the next morning, Bitzer finally opened up the barn. A famished flock hurtled past him to the feeding trough. Thanks to his sleepless night, Shaun was slow to get up. He stretched and slowly followed his friends to their disappointing breakfast. By the time Shaun had arrived at the trough, there was nothing but a few crumbs left. Shaun wandered off glumly. After the trouble he'd gone to the previous night, what did he have to show for it? Nothing. The flock couldn't even be bothered to save him any food, just as Shaun started to think he might never eat again. He spotted a pizza crust on the ground. It was better than nothing. He reached for it and went to put it in his mouth. Before he could, Shaun spotted another crust a little way off, then another, and another. The trail of pizza crust led all the way back to the barn. Sean followed it. He wanted to know who had taken the pizza from the night before. He was also secretly quite impressed that anyone could eat as much pizza as him in one sitting. The barn should have been empty. The flock had disappeared to the field to follow up their breakfast with farmer's finest grass. Streams of sunlight filtered through the beams, casting shadows here and there. Suddenly, Sean saw a shadowy figure dart across the room. Then he heard a clatter. It came from behind the stairs at the back of the barn. He tried to ignore the trembling in his knees as he edged closer. Chapter 4. Sean peered into the shadows. He could make out a small figure. It wasn't a sheep or a rogue pig or one of the farmer's naughty nieces or nephews on their yearly visit. This creature was not like anything Sean had ever seen before. As the figure moved into the light, Sean could see that she had big eyes and long floppy pink ears, so she was also blue. Blue. Sean had never met anyone blue. Sorry, that was my nose. Ah! Screamed Sean. Ah! The creature screamed back at him. Sean dived behind a hay bale. After a couple of seconds, he slowly peeked over it. The creature smiled shyly back at him. Well, she didn't look dangerous. The sheep cautiously tossed a bit of pizza over to the creature. She reached out and gobbled it up. Sean held out another piece to coax the little thing out of her corner. Whatever this little creature was, she wasn't scary. Sean gave her an encouraging smile, and she took a few steps towards him. She muttered some strange sounds that made Sean giggle with surprise. The creature giggled back in a perfect imitation. Sean grinned, but then his jaw dropped in shock. The creature was actually glowing. Just then the creature looked through the door and noticed the flock outside. Feeling less frightened now that she had met Sean, she dashed out to meet more friends. The flock had seen many strange things at Mossy Bottom Farm, but they had never met anyone like this. The odd little thing was copying all the sounds they made. Sean followed her out and introduced the creature to his friends. The creature seemed to be trying to tell them something. She went from sheep to sheep, muttering urgently, but politely in her little language. Once they got over her strangeness, they began to realize just how adorable she was. They liked her even more when she revealed how great she was at impressions. Having picked up the farmer's mail and newspaper from the mailbox as he did every morning, Bitzer passed the flock, who was suddenly being very well behaved. In Bitzer's world, there was nothing more suspicious than a group of sheep acting normally. He padded closer to the flock and sniffed the air. He growled a warning to the sheep, and was surprised when someone in the flock growled back at him. As Bitzer looked around, Sean growled again to clear his throat, then smiled. The sheep were certainly behaving oddly, but they did seem to be behaving. The puzzled pooch trotted off again. The flock had managed to keep their new friends safely hidden. As Sean waved goodbye to Bitzer, he couldn't help but notice the front page of the newspaper he was holding. So that was it. The creature was an alien. Sean looked over at his new friend. He had a feeling she had a lot to tell him if he only knew how to talk to her. And Chapter 5. Lula was lost, hopelessly lost on a planet she had never been to before. To Lula, Mossy Bottom Farm was full of weird and wonderful things. There were the plump pink creatures who seemed to like swimming in whatever the brown stuff was that they were swimming in. There was the cross-looking yellow creature wearing an interesting blue hat, and there were her new woolly friends, who seemed to like eating more than anything else. In this unfamiliar landscape, there was one thing that Lula thought she recognized. It was large, made of metal, and looked pretty powerful. So they had spaceships here too. Lula made her way over to it, marveling at her lucky find. Before anyone knew it, Lula had jumped excitedly into the combine harvester's front seat. Sean followed her with a smile. This sweet little alien was so curious. He sat in the driver's seat and tried to show her how the combine harvester worked. Meanwhile, Lula was trying to tell Sean about her plan to fly this strange spaceship back to her home planet. The only problem, Sean didn't understand a word of what she was saying. Lula closed her eyes and concentrated. Her floppy ears gently rose into the air and started to vibrate. The ignition key turned. Sean jumped as he heard the engine roar into life. Lula was controlling the combine harvester with her alien powers. The machine sped off over the fields, churning up crops as it careered around in circles. Sean grabbed the steering wheel. He had to admit this was good fun. Lula looked disappointed. Why wasn't this spaceship taking off? Earth's spaceship seemed a lot harder to control. She concentrated harder. The levers controlling the combine harvester moved frantically in all directions. Sean and Lula zoomed around the field. As they passed the other farm animals, Lula's powers sent them hovering into the air, creating a floating cloud of pigs and chickens over the machine. In the shade of the farmhouse, Bitzer was admiring a freshly painted batch of signs. He sighed happily as he sipped on a cup of tea. He had to admit that the morning was going quite well. All of a sudden, the combine harvester rounded the corner. Bitzer watched, open-mouthed, as it showered him and his team with scattered crops. And surely that wasn't the pigs flying around after it. There was nothing Bitzer could do to stop the combine from mounting a pile of ramp-shaped wood. He watched in horror as it came crashing down, sputtering and rolling to a stop. Sean breathed a sigh of relief as the pigs and chickens rained down around the combine harvester. Lula looked disappointed. Maybe this big metal machine wasn't a spaceship after all. Sean was suddenly aware of Bitzer scowling at him through the window. It was time to make a speedy exit. Sean grabbed the little alien's hand and ran. Bitzer grabbed the keys from the ignition when he looked up again. Sean was gone. But Bitzer had bigger things to worry about. He wasn't the only one who had noticed the chaotic joy around the farm. The farmer was angrily stamping through the field towards him. Bitzer braced himself. He knew how much the farmer loved his combine harvester. He was a combine harvester enthusiast. While most people dream of a bigger house, an exotic holiday or a flashy new car, the farmer had always dreamed of owning the Wheat Chopper 500, a top-of-the-range shiny super powerful mega combine harvester that would make him the envy of all the farmers in Mossington. But that was only a dream. For now the farmer cared lovingly for the combine harvester he had, the combine harvester that had crash-landed right in the middle of his field, and that was currently surrounded by mangled parts. Bitzer held his breath and waited for the farmer to erupt with rage. All remained quiet. The farmer stood and stared at the crops in the field. Bitzer looked at him in concern. Was he okay? Was this the final straw? The farmer stood stock still. The look on his face navigated its way through rage to confusion, and onto outright joy. Uh-oh. Bitzer knew his master well enough to know what this look meant. The farmer had an idea. Bitzer couldn't be sure what it was, but he had a horrible feeling it was going to mean more work for him. Standing among the strange patterns the combine harvester had carved out in the crops, the uneasy dog waited for his master to say something. And we have reached chapter 6. So that is going to be it for this video, everyone. We have reached chapter 6. I've read another 3 chapters of Shaun the Sheep, Farmageddon, the official book of the film. In my next Storytime video, I will be reading Wallace and Gromit, A Matter of Loaf and Death, the full novelisation of that book, in the next video on Saturday. So I will hopefully see you then soon. But thank you for joining me on this second Storytime video, and I will see you again soon. This is ArdmanFan2021 signing off.